What do you think of Donald Trump? I mean, is he a man who could make America great again, or is he a
No.
danger for American democracy?
Look, Biden is a danger for American democracy. Trump is a danger for American democracy. Uh, what are we doing with octogenarian leaders right now? Uh, Period. Uh, I'm aghast at the Biden administration. I was aghast at the Trump administration. I was profoundly disappointed with the Obama administration. I was absolutely aghast at the Bush Jr. administration. During my whole lifetime, there's been one president that I think bears high respect, and that's John Kennedy.
Mhm.
And He made his early blunders, and then he became a great man, and then they killed him.
Mhm.
And Beyond that, Johnson, no thank you. Nixon, no thank you. Gerald Ford, uh, Jimmy Carter's very nice man, very not effective. Ronald Reagan, no thank you. George Bush Sr. had his moments and then dropped the ball. Clinton was really so amateurish and dilettantish in governance. George Bush Jr. was a disaster. Uh, Obama was, those 8 years went by and nothing happened. He
Mhm.
was, you felt he wouldn't do something completely awful, and he didn't. Uh,
Mhm.
he was level headed, but didn't lead to any change because the system is
Mhm.
just blocked.
Yeah.
Trump completely unstable, and Biden an octogenarian neocon. What more could you want?
What does it say about the American political system that you have still in the polls a highly rated former president who is attacked by attorneys, who is involved in a whole array of criminal law, I mean criminal cases. I follow this, from a lot of distance, but I think it's always a bit a dangerous symptom if political fights are, fought on the courts. That they start
Of
to attack.
course, of
How do,
course.
how do you assess that? I mean, what does it stand for? What kind of
What it
symptom is
means,
that?
the main thing is Americans do not trust their institutions anymore.
Mm.
That's the dominant fact. Americans do not trust their institutions. And the reason is government operates by lies. And that's terrible. And if you do that pervasively, you end up with the Congress with a trust rating of 10% of the public, something like that. And this collapse of trustworthiness started with the assassination of President Kennedy and the lies that were told about it. And then it was followed by Watergate and Vietnam War and one war after another based on lies. And so the American people are deeply unhappy. The political system has proven to be corrupted and unable to reform itself. And the main lesson I would take from this is don't have a presidential system. By the way, you have a parliamentary system. At least you get the parties have to discuss with each other and negotiate something, and it's a little bit more stable.
So, good evening, good afternoon, and wherever you are, good evening or good afternoon. So, while I was still doing my undergraduate, my professor told me one thing. He told me that the language you speak will determine how you think. Yep, language you speak will determine how you think. Um, if you speak Swahili, you will think in the lens of Swahili. If you speak French, you will start thinking in the lens of France and French. You understand? This is a theory that is verifiable, though it has some weaknesses, just like any other theory. It is called linguistic relativity. Yeah? Linguistic relativity, or if you like, you can call it Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The same thing that happens in the real world today is before a bad thing happens, before we have these terror groups. In East Africa, we have Al Shabaab. In northern parts of Africa, we have the ISIS and the Al Qaeda and the Taliban. In West Africa, we have the Boko Haram, right? These people are somehow linked with one another and they share the same philosophy, the philosophy of cleansing, yeah? Cleansing, which is so bad. And they speak one language in common. They speak Arabic, right? I'm not saying in any way whatsoever that Arabic is a language of violence. That is not what I am saying. But there are some lines, within the Islamic books that are getting misinterpreted, and it is being misinterpreted to fit the narrative of those who are using these words, or those who are willing to override the true meaning of the words over there, you know. So it follows that we've also had some conflict between Israel and its neighbors. It is a long conflict that has always been going on for a very, very long time, right? Now, come back and look at it. Whatever is happening right now between Israel and Palestine, these are things that were prophesied. These are things that were said, not even in the holy books. Even if we leave the holy books aside, the thing which is happening right now, they were spoken by the very own leaders. You know, sometimes we humans, we have the nature of speaking our minds out, speaking out our plans, and even if this plan involves neutralizing people, we'll still go ahead and say it because it's our human nature, right? Now, here's this economic professor, Dr. Jeffrey Sachs. Dr. Jeffrey Sachs explains, and he tries to give an analogy of how this operates, of how the West supported Israel in taking over Middle East, and how he spoke to the public that he was going to do it, and the public did nothing. The UN did nothing. They just watched. The NATO did nothing. But while it is Putin who is doing whatever he is doing, now the UN has an issue and the NATO has an issue. But because it's Israel, there is no zero issues. Now let's listen to Jeffrey Sachs. I shall get back and share with you my thoughts.
The truth is that Netanyahu said in 1996 in a book called Fighting Terrorism, he laid out the whole plan. Usually when there are terrible plans, they don't hide them. Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. And I'm not meaning to make simplistic comparisons. I'm just making the point that people say what they're going to do. Netanyahu wrote in 1996 his plan for how he was going to make Israel safe. Brzezinski wrote in 1997 a different book called The Grand Chessboard of how he was going to make the United States the world's unipolar power. So they write the story, and you can go back and evaluate. Did they know what they're talking about? Are they full of BS? Did they cause a lot of trouble? So just on 2 points. Brzezinski in 1997 says the U.S. can expand NATO. Russia will have no choice but to accede. What's Russia going to do? Is it going to become an ally of China? No way, says Brzezinski. You know, okay, interesting. Didn't quite get that one right, Zvig. Netanyahu has a different idea, and it's coherent, but it's kind of madness. His idea is we captured the Palestinian lands in 1967, and we're never going to give them back. So we're just going to rule over the Palestinians. There's a second take which says we're not going to give it back because God in the year 700 BC or in the year 1000 BC, but written in a book, the book of Joshua in the year 700 BC, told us it's ours. And there are people that absolutely believe that as well. Netanyahu spells out very clearly the following story. He says we're going to keep the land. There will be resistance, Hamas, Hezbollah, other militant resistance. What will we do about it? You can't really fight the terrorists, he says. You have to fight the states that back the terrorists.
And Iran is the central one in his mind.
But interestingly for Netanyahu, he lays out one by one. Yes, of course, Iran is the central one in his mind. But so too is Iraq under Saddam. He supported Hamas. So too is Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So too is Somalia. So too is Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. You know, he laid it out, and he at various times listed the countries. And one list that showed up in the Pentagon just after 9/11 was 7 countries: Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Libya. And you know what the plan was? 7 wars in 5 years. The U.S. using Israel? No, no, no. This is Israel using the U.S. as if our military is in their hands, which in effect it is. You take Wolfowitz and you take Feith and you take these neocons and you take Netanyahu. They game planned the whole thing out. Well, I regard Netanyahu as having been our greatest disastrous president of the 21st century because he ran American foreign policy for 20 years and he cost us trillions of dollars. And where is the Middle East today? War in Syria, war in Lebanon, war in Palestine, unrest in Iraq, war in Yemen, chaos in Sudan, chaos in Somalia, chaos in Libya. Great job, Bibi. You did a terrific job. So this is, to my mind, what this is all about. These people have ideas. How many wars has China been in the last 40 years? Let me count them. That would be 0. Not one war in 40 years. When was the most recent war that China was in? January 16 to February 16, 1979. 1 month in a conflict with Vietnam, which had to do actually with Vietnam having overthrown a government in Cambodia. Okay, 1 month. We are not at dire risk from China. China is not mass murdering its population, but we are gearing up in the United States for war with China. Why? In 2015, they say that China has become so powerful that it threatens American primacy, and China's rise is no longer in America's interest. And so you watch this mentality in the U.S. go into effect. Suddenly, because China's economically successful, they're not just economically successful, they're the enemy. So everything becomes rhetoric. In the case of Ukraine, which I have followed from 1990 as advisor not only to Mikhail Gorbachev and advisor to Yeltsin, but also advisor to President Leonid Kuchma of Ukraine. I was advising the Ukrainian government in 1994. I'm not against Ukraine in any way. I'm against using Ukraine and Ukrainians being slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands because the United States wants to move another piece on the board to have its military bases on the border of Russia. And why, by the way? Because again, there's a whole telltale line of reasoning. Just like the Soviet Union broke up, we can induce Russia to break up along ethnic lines. This is a meme of Washington. These people are out of their minds to be provoking us towards nuclear war this way.
One thing I've noticed is that the world is a hypocritical world. The USA tries to make itself seem as the moral epitome of cultures, of morals, of countries. No, the United States does not have the moral authority to be an epitome of any instance of goodness because they breached that very long time ago. They breached that when they bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They breached that when they attacked Cuba. They breached that when they attacked Vietnam, when they attacked Japan, there's so many, countless, when they were involved in the death of this man from DRC, Patrice Lumumba. So they have no say. They can't be an epitome of nothing. Now, this whole idea of bringing peace and humanitarian aid to helping those people who are suffering is all just an act of hypocrisy. What is happening right now is we see the world right now is kind of divided into two. You are either a member of NATO or you are not a member of NATO. You know, Russia is the only biggest superpower which is not a member of this NATO thing. But that pisses off the West so much. You know, Putin just attacked a single country just once. It happened once. What I know. Maybe it's not once, but what I know is once. The United States and the whole world was everywhere painting the bad image of this man. But for this other guy from Israel, there is no help at all he's being given, you know. It's just a whole hypocrisy that they are providing here. If you look at Palestine, people are dying over there, but we have this country of USA which calls itself, we are the world police. Why are they not arresting this war criminal? Why should it be a country all the way from global south, the southernmost country which is habitable, South Africa? Why should people come all the way from there to just go and report someone whom you can easily go and report them? These people are being armed by the USA. But now they can't do nothing to save lives of these Palestinians, but they can do something to save the lives of white people in Ukraine. Do you see the hypocrisy? Do you see it? I'm always making a reference to the book by George Orwell, the book which is called The Animal Farm. Is a very good representation of what happens in world politics, the geopolitics of the world, of Earth. There are some lives, they believe that on the papers, they say all lives are equal. But on the actual ground, some lives are more equal than others. And this is what George Orwell also puts in his book. Some animals were more equal than other animals. Like the fat black pig, he was more equal than those other pigs or those other animals, like the chickens and the donkeys. Yep. But they were both having a revolution, and they both were accusing the white pig of causing havoc. What does that remind you? It reminds you of the hypocrisy of the world. If the USA really wants to bring peace, they should start everywhere. We say that there is a Swahili proverb which says, sheria ni msumeno hukata mbele na nyuma. I'll try to translate it as much as I can. It says that the law is like a seesaw. It cuts both the beginning and in the end. Or you can also, there's a translation I've just remembered. The law is like a double-edged sword. It cuts on both sides, right? But these of the USA, people dying in Palestine, these people are even telling us their plans, but they can't act to save those lives. It's just an act of hypocrisy. DRC people are dying, but they are not doing anything. Jeffrey Sachs has done a nice work to expose these guys, and you can also do a work of exposing the truth. Share your thoughts, share this video with your loved ones, or anyone you think will appreciate this valuable information. Yeah, support me on Patreon. I shall surely appreciate for your support, and see you the next one.